Well, howdy. Nice to see you. Hope you got the paperwork as you came in. If you didn't get it, you should know fines begin today, and you'll just be billed by the conference center pretty excessively for not having the paperwork. So I've asked you to do a little bit of an unusual study, I realize, in the book of Judges, and there are always two thoughts in my mind whenever I read the book of Judges. One is, boy, I'm so glad I didn't live during the era of the book of Judges. And the other side is, wow, it still kind of feels like we're living in the era of the book of Judges. And so that's why I feel like it's such a helpful book for us to look at together. I said to you earlier, it covers a span of almost 350 years. So it's, you're watching a lot of stuff that's being compressed, and it's challenging because I'm trying to give you, the quickest glimpse, and I can't do everything in the book. You saw kind of the Syrians, the Edomites come, that's Othniel. The Moabites, that's Ehud and Shamgar. We skipped over Deborah, which just, I'm so sad, but I had to add it. She deals with the Canaanites. Gideon deals with the Midianites. You're kind of going around the clock, you might say, from northeast to the south on the map. And then Abimelech is one guy we won't get a chance to look at. He also deals with the Midianites. Tola and Jair are two others that we call them minor judges because there's just not a lot of data. But I do want to take you today to the guy called Jephthah. And so in order to do that, I have to kind of take you back to Gideon. And you may remember as Gideon wins victory, he establishes worship. He establishes himself as the center of worship, makes the ephod. Remember that? That's the high priest thing. And then says, okay, well, now let's, no sense in driving all the way to Shechem. Why don't we just worship right here? And he erects a special real temple to the Hebrew is Baal Berit, which is the Lord of the covenant. And so he takes the false concept of the Baals, the false gods, and the one true God who has made a covenant with his people and mixes them together. We call that syncretism. We are always at risk of syncretism, of taking the God of all ages and mixing worship with the God of this age, whoever the God of this age may be. And it's just a perennial challenge. And so it's a to say the least, it's a deadly spiritual mixture. It corrupts himself. Gideon corrupts his family. Remember, he's got 70 kids, and in fact, he even has 71 when you count Abimelech. My dad's the king. Remember that? So this is the guy who would not be king, except for he just names the one kid that might even be discounted as my dad's the king. And so it's a total mess. I can't do much about Abimelech. I just would say to you, he is so resentful that he's not counted within the family because of this screwed up family, that he tries to kill all of his brothers, kills 69 of them. But one escapes. Jotham, and a great story worth reading. Chapter 9. Can't do it right now, but but in the end, what you learn is, instead of the guy who would be judge and ruling for God's people is instead slaughtering God's people. And so there's the corruption of the family, but then the foundational damage of worship is even worse. And that's really where you get to this sick admixture of true faith and the God of the age. And so that's why I wanted you to read this passage here. I'll just have you start in Judges 10, teaching you just a little bit about Jephthah. And I just titled it Unwanted, Unwilling, and Uncontrolled. I think you'll see as we go through. So verse 17 there, right? When the Ammonites were called to arms and camped in Gilead, the Israelis assembled and camped at Mizpah. And so I know that just thrills you to hear that. So the Gilead is the region that's east of the Jordan. A certain portion of the Holy Land was still east of the Jordan. Most of it is to the west of the Jordan. And so it's the area below the river Jabbok. You may remember the river Jabbok. That's where Jacob wrestles with God. Remember that? And he gets his new name. He's no longer Jacob, rip-off artist, right? He is Yisrael, a prince with God. It's just a terrific moment. And he wrestles him at this river that is Jabbok. And if you get it, sort of a Hebrew pun, that is Jacob came to the place of Yabach, which means to wrestle. It's the wrestling river. And so the area south of all that is the area that was given to God's people, all the way down to the river Arnon, which, that and $5 will get you a cup of water at Starbucks today. So anyway, but when you hear Ammonites, that may help you a little bit, because if you go all the way east to the headwaters of the Ammonon the river Jebus, you'll come to the place that today we call Ammon, Jordan. Okay, so when you come to the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, this is the eastern edge of Old Gilead. So it's that portion east of the river. So they camped at Mizpah. I'll just say this to you quickly. Mizpah just means watchtower. And so you're going to find several places. If you're trying to follow on a map, you're like, man, it seems to be everywhere. That's because watchtower is just something high. And so the other name for this is Ramoth Gilead, which is like Gilead Heights. And so they stayed up a little bit higher above the plain, because there's the potential for the Ammonites to swarm over them. So they go up into the heights, into the rocks, to keep themselves safe. Okay, well, that's a lot, Matt. Why don't you move on? Good. Verse 18. The leaders of the people of Gilead said to each other, whoever will launch the attacks against the Ammonites will be the head of all those living in Gilead. So, wow. These people say, listen, we need somebody to lead things. Now, up to now, until you get to Abimelech and sadly to Jephthah, God has raised up these judges. But now it's a recruitment process. And Abimelech recruited himself, and now they're off looking for someone, recruiting to be their judge. They could have just simply called on the Lord. Why? Because the region that they're looking at is the region of, if I just say Reuben and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh. It had been granted to them. They could have called upon the Lord, but they've gone back to depending upon themselves. So now then, watch how this plays out. Go to chapter 11 there, verse 1. Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a mighty warrior. His father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. So you say, that's not good. Yeah, so fill in the blank there up above it, if you will. Unwanted, okay? Unwanted and needing to be liked. Unwanted and needed to be liked, and therefore vulnerable, yeah? This guy is in a tough place. So again, if you look at verse 1, he's a mighty warrior. He's a tough guy. And when you see his family, you understand how he became one. His father was Gilead, so he's named after the grandson of Manasseh. I mean, it's a big shot family. But his mother is a prostitute, and that means he's an outcast. You see how that works? So even though he's got capacity, he's already on the social out. So let me take you to verse 2 now, and follow and follow along. So Gilead's wife also bore him sons, and when they were grown up, they drove Jephthah away. They all the time they're growing up just fine. But all of a sudden he finds out as an adult, guess what? We dealt you out of the deck. Notice what they say. You're not going to get any inheritance in our family, they said, because you're the son of another woman. So you're done. All this time he's part of the family, and he's part of a significant family. And then now, as an adult, he finds out that he is not only unemployed, but utterly unwelcome. And so that's why I call him unwanted And certainly that's not a great place to be. Verse 3, so Jephthah fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, which is just about 18 miles east, or 15 so east, where a group of adventurers gathered around him and followed him. I love that translation, a group of adventurers. The Hebrew word is rik. Rik, you got to roll it. And when you're talking about it, like with a vessel, it means empty. When you're talking about a tool, it means worthless. And when you're talking about as a man, it means a thug. It's just a bunch of lowlifes. That's who he gathers together with. Because he's with a bunch of other guys who don't have a place. And so where they are, they're right in where the things sort of narrow, and it's a great place to nail a traveler, rip them off, beat them up, and send them away. So this guy is in a bad place, to say the least. Now, he can handle himself, but that's about all that you want to say. So that leads to that second little blank, if you just want to fill it in. Unwilling and needing to be needed. I think there's a missing B there because my English are not that good. Unwilling and needing to be needed and insecure. You know, if you're unwanted, man, you hope that someone would like you. And you've been pushed out, boy, you hope that somewhere someone would need you. And boy, that really messes them up. So sometime later, verse 4, see that? I just want to say, we have such historical data on this. I can tell you, you don't care how I know, but this is 1096 BC, okay? So it isn't like sometime later, mythical story, fairy tale. We know exactly when this happened, 1096 BC. When the Ammonites made war on Israel, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. How humiliating that trip was. They're like, buddy, you got to go. And now they're like, we need you to come. Okay? Come, they said, notice verse 6, and be our commander so we can fight the Ammonites. I mean, this is how desperate we are. The guy we never wanted is the guy we have to have. Verse 7, Jephthah said to them, didn't you hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? There's a good question, right? Notice, verse 8, the elders of Gilead said to him, nevertheless, we're turning to you now. There's a non-answer. You see that? Now you know that this family is life and dysfunction junction. Do you feel it? They just skip everything. But we're turning to you now. Come with us to fight the Ammonites, and you'll be our head over all who live in Gilead. So that's, again, the tribe, Reuben, Gad, half-tribe of Manasseh. That's a massive amount of things. You rule them all. And Jephthah answered, verse 9, suppose you take me back to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them to me. Will I really be your head? This is the second time. I mean, you guys lied to me before. You let me grow up thinking I was part of the family, and then you pitched me out when you got opportunity and had a little more power. So, I don't trust you. The elders of Gilead replied, verse 10, the Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say. Well, I feel better now. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander. So that means political leader and military leader, okay? Head and commander over them. And he repeated all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. So again, this is now where he has, before the Lord, he's come with this mixture of who God really is and who the gods of the Moabites and Ammonites say God really is, now all mixed together. And I put a little break in the story. I wish I could tell you more, but I want you to go home today. But he actually tries to negotiate with the Ammonites. It's very, very powerful. He gives them a historical argument. Listen, this never was your land. You know it. I know it. The Amorites lived there beforehand, and the Amorites are completely gone at this point. He gives them a theological presentation. Look, you guys think if one God beats the other, then the land is theirs. Well, the God Yahweh defeated their God, the Amorites' God, Chemosh. So forget it. You know it's it belongs to God people. And he even gives them a powerful legal argument. He goes, look, this happened 300 years ago. And you guys never, ever lived here. And you never have made a claim here. And the people who did live here haven't been here for 3 centuries. And now all of a sudden you're saying, no, this is really, really our territory. He is flatly rejected. He's flatly rejected. And so it's battle time. So if you want to fill in that blank there above verse 29, uncontrolled and needing to be certain and dangerous. He's a very dangerous guy. He needs to be liked. Why? Because he gets shoved out by his own family. Listen, all of us like to be liked. If you don't like to be liked, there's something wrong with you, okay? But if you need to be liked, they make medicine for that, okay? It's therapy time. You understand? But that's compounded. He needs to be needed. All of us like to be needed. There's nothing wrong with that. But you need to be needed? Listen, you're a dangerous person. Do you understand that? And now he's got to be certain. Why? Because if he doesn't win the battle, then he doesn't get to be somebody. You see it? It's all hinging on something exterior to him. It's not who he is on the inside. It's not who God says about him. It's what he will get to accomplish. And if he doesn't accomplish, he's a disaster. Do you know how many people have told themselves that lie in this place? I have to get this. I have to succeed. I have to pass this test, get through this exam, that board, this review, get that job, get that raise, get that assignment. And if I don't know who I am anymore. And that's exactly where he is, because he's got to have it. And so, because he's got to be certain, he becomes a very dangerous man. Verse 29, then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. By the way, that's all you need. Now, this is not, came within. That won't happen until the resurrection of Jesus, okay? And the birth of the church. But the Spirit of the Lord upon him, that is, he has now the power of God. That should be enough. But he crossed Gilead and Manasseh, passed through the Mizpah of Gilead, and from there he advanced against the Ammonites. So he's headed all the way out to the far east. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord. You need to understand, this is a public statement. He makes a vow, and please notice what his vow is that he makes before all of his army. Lord, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. Woo! Oh, where'd you come up with that one? Well, see, he's got this bizarre mixture, syncretism, the mixture of the faith. And what you do with the pagan gods is you pay them off. And so he's like, well, God, I guess you're more like the pagan gods, so I'm going to give you a payoff. And the payoff that he promises is that he will sacrifice whatever comes out of his house. Now, some people have tried to help Jephthah out, but like whatever animal comes out of his house. No, listen. The Israelites did not have animals living in their house. Okay, so he's talking about whatever servant, or he's got people in his household, and so he's thinking, okay, I have to give a human sacrifice. Why? Because that's the pattern. That's the thing that he's learned. The Moabites, they sacrificed living children to Chemosh. The Ammonites, they sacrificed to Molech, and they'd sacrifice kids, generally speaking. It's a horrible thing. I just need to say it. In his mind, it's reasonable. Some of you read the Iliad, and you probably don't remember. You had to get through it. They don't even do it anymore, which is too bad. But in the Iliad, you remember the Greeks are coming against Troy. Agamemnon, the head of the Greeks, is trying to come to Troy, and his ships can't move because he has offended Artemis. Artemis is Diana, the great goddess of the hunt. And there are various theories as to why he offended Diana. But Diana's mad at him. And Diana is also the god of the winds, the Etesian winds. And so he calls upon Diana, come on, cough up the winds. And she comes to him and says, no, I won't give you the winds until you sacrifice your daughter. And so he sacrifices his daughter, Iphigenia, to Diana, and then the winds blow, and they come up against Troy. That story, and I understand it's a story, but it's a concept that is normative for ancient worship. That's a story of over 1,000 years before. But it is normative, and I could take you through it. I've read tons of ancient Near Eastern literature. This is in the soup. And so he says, I'll just kill whoever comes out of my house, I'll kill them and I'll burn them up as a sacrifice to God, which is like, buddy, that's stupid. That's the Greek word, stupid. Apparently you know Greek. So verse 32, then Jephthah went over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into his hands, which was, He devastated 20 towns from Aroer to the vicinity of Minith as far as Abel Keramim. Thus Israel subdued Ammon. So really, he's saying from the Arnon River, which is kind of like halfway down the Dead Sea, all the way up to the river Jabbok. All that land, again, is reconquered. Now, here comes the deal, verse 34. When Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sound of tambourines? When someone was victorious in battle, women would come out dancing, and this is kind of classic with tambourines and music. She was an only child. Except for her, he had neither son nor daughter. When he saw her, he tore his clothes, which is a sign of anguish, and cried, "Oh, my daughter, you've made me miserable and wretched, because I made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." Yes, you can. Deuteronomy 12. Moses has hardly gotten to restate the command. Deuteronomy is the second statement of the law. Deuteros, second, Namas, law. Hardly got to restate the law before he says, listen, if you offer human sacrifice, it's an abomination before God, and it'll bring a curse on you. 12:31. Deuteronomy 12:31. So, of course he doesn't have to do it. But you'll notice what his problem is. He made a statement, a public statement. And so it's all really about him. And I just want you to see it. Oh, my daughter, you have made me miserable and wretched. Well, who's going to die here, buckwheat? Huh? You've made me miserable and wretched because I have made a vow to the Lord that I can't break. It's like, wow, you have just really made my life difficult. Come on. My father, you just have to admire this young woman. My father, she replied, you've given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised. Now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request. Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends because I'll never marry. She's saying, because I'll never marry, I'll never have children, my lineage will perish, and I'll be forgotten. And big-hearted Jephthah, you may go, verse 38. You may go, he said. And he let her go for 2 months. And she and the girls went into the hills and wept because she would never marry. After the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed. And she was a virgin. Again, people have tried to twist this and say, he couldn't kill his own kid. The answer is, yeah, he killed his own kid. He got so screwed up because he tried to take a little of the real God and a little bit of the God of the age and stir them together and say, it's pretty good. It's good enough. No, it's not. And it becomes a complete disaster. Well, I hope this cheers you up this morning. So let me give you a couple lessons before we quit, huh? Here's the first one, just kind of lessons from his struggles. 1, respect your raw wounds. Respect your raw wounds. All of us have them. Just recognize when you've really been damaged. What you can't do is cover it up. This guy covered it up by, heading off and being a criminal and proving what a tough guy he was. It didn't help him. If you don't respect those raw wounds, then you're always seeking approval from others. You see, if you can't be who God made you, you work forever to present yourself as something that people will want or like. This is the whole danger of the image. The idol is a terrible thing because it's a false image of God. But it creates in us a false image of ourselves. And we run around with this cardboard picture of us that is way better than we are. And we hold it up in front of people and say, just look at the cardboard. Look at how wonderful I am. And what happens is people try to get behind the cardboard, which can make you crazy. Because you just want them to see the cardboard. And you tell them what you've achieved. You tell them about your roles. I just was speaking with a bunch of pilots here recently. The sweetest words in a pilot's ears are, so what do you do? Because I'm a pilot. Oh, really? Great. Look at the cardboard. Just don't ever ask about me. See how risky that is? We all have real wounds, and we have to deal with them. And the smart thing is to get it before God, right? Second one, restrain your rash words. Restrain your rash words. If I went through this group and said, tell me about the biggest wounds you've ever had in your life, almost everyone here will say, this is what someone said to me or said about me or reported concerning me. Man, we got to be careful. Our words are powerful things. If you go to the Arab world and someone swears at you, and where I go, people swear at me, but and someone swears at you, you duck because you know that word has such power, you don't want it to hit you. It would be good for us to remember that because we say, oh, look, I was mad, I didn't mean it. Too late. You pulled the pin on the grenade and said, yeah, I didn't mean to let go of it. Too late. The damage is done. And saying I didn't mean it doesn't change the impact. I didn't mean to break your window. Yeah, but the window's broken. Could we talk about that? See, but we want to make it about us instead of about the damage done. Okay, third thing. Reject the wrong God. Reject the wrong God. There is always the God of the age that wants to be worshiped. That's not an ancient phenomenon. It's just as modern today as ever. So, and the problem is, if you get the wrong God, relentless sacrifice will always be demanded. You see? Now, I'm assuming no one here killed their kid today or even last week. Now, you may have wanted to. That's an entirely different discussion. Okay? But the God of this age is a God about materialism and possessions and defining our worth and our value from what we have. The God of this age is about adventure and achievement and defining our worth by what we've done, the places we've been to, and the spots we know. The God of this age is a very powerful God and wants us to mix that stuff with the historic Christian faith. And it'll get you in trouble every time. We can't mix those things. And what we have to do is recognize it, battle that, and say, no, I'm not going to go down that path. But if you have some stuff and you have some influence and you have some status, and you say you use it for other people, it can fill that need to be liked. It can just buff up that need to be needed. It's a whole lot different to say, no, Lord, I know who you are. I know who I am. I know what you've given to me, and I know what I don't want to control my life, and I'm going to turn it loose. And it's not about me. It's really about you and me being able to worship you faithfully. Very, very different. Or just listen to it this way. Paul says it, Romans 12. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. J.B. Phillips did a great paraphrase. Don't let the world squeeze you into its mold. Yeah? That's the issue. Needing to be liked can get you in a lot of trouble. Needing to be needed, even more so. This is one judge who they tried to recruit. Didn't work at all. The one before him tried to recruit himself. Didn't work at all. We need the one judge over all time who is not going to be swayed by whether he has the approval of men or not. The one judge over all time, the Lord Jesus Christ, he was despised and rejected among men, right? We didn't see a single thing attractive in him, it says in Isaiah. It says in John, he came to his own, and his own wouldn't even receive him. And so he said, that's it, I'll just crush you all like a bug. No. He said, I know who I am. I only do those things that the Father shows me. And I came here for a purpose, and I'm going to fulfill that purpose. That's someone you ought to live with, someone you ought to follow. Yeah? Okay. Let me shut up and let's pray, huh? There's a real God, and he really knows you and all of your wounds, all of your failures, all the things that you hold out to impress others, and how hard all that is, how fatiguing it is to get away from all that. And all he really ever wants you to do was to respond to him and trust him and believe him that he can handle it for you. He's handled the worst aspect of our whole life, the sin that contaminates everything. But he's ready to handle everything in our life. The broken relationships, the damaged connections, the harsh attitudes, the faulty conclusions. But we just got to get to him and say, Lord, I need help. It's not hard, but it's amazing how hard we will work to not do it. So I just want to thank you, Lord, for your patience with us. It's amazing always. But help us not to traffic in that patience. Help us to use that patience as an opening to step toward you, to step away from us and our stuff and our desire to be someone, to do something, and just to learn that all you wanted us to be was your child. Please show us that. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.